Hello and welcome to the Heatley Stand-In podcast on a big Tuesday night in the world of football. On this evening's episode, we will discuss the Elijah Hollands sanction handed down to Carlton by the AFL this afternoon, take a look back at the loss against St Kilda on the weekend, also dissect why George Hewett isn't getting a game, and I also have a few things to say regarding Paul Guerra's departure at the Melbourne Football Club. So a bit more on that later on. Though before that, you can head to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search the Heatley Stand-In podcast at any time. You can go back and watch old episodes. And if you're on the move in the car, you can find the podcast on Spotify. Just search the Heatley Stand-In podcast. Well, after almost 3 weeks since Carlton's fateful Thursday night match against Collingwood, where all the focus has centred on the health and well-being of Elijah Hollands, the AFL has finally handed down its penalty to the Carlton Football Club. Just before 4:30 this afternoon, the AFL released this statement, and it reads, "The AFL has finalised its inquiries into the circumstances surrounding Carlton player Elijah Hollands' participation in the round 6 match against Collingwood. Following a review of Carlton's initial report and subsequent follow-up inquiries, the AFL found there were sufficient visual cues, performance data during the match, and knowledge of the player's individual circumstances to indicate that Elijah should have been removed from play earlier than the 20-minute mark of the final quarter." Now, the AFL further determined that the delay in removing the player from the field had such outcomes that consequently a reasonable person would regard that as bringing the game into disrepute. These findings are made against the Carlton Football Club collectively and not against any individual. As a result of this finding that Carlton brought the game into disrepute, the club has been found to have breached AFL Rule 2.3a and has been sanctioned $75,000, with the full amount to be donated to the AFL's mental health partner Headspace. The donation will support the implementation of community youth mental health initiatives. AFL Chief Executive Officer Andrew Dillon said the events of that night were unprecedented. "What transpired that night was something our game hasn't seen before," Dillon said. "While Elijah underwent checks, he should not have been left on the field for that period of time. We want to acknowledge Elijah and his family. Our focus continues to be on Elijah's well-being and ensuring that he continues to receive the best possible care and support. This incident has highlighted that while our physical injury protocols are well understood, mental health presentations are variable and complex, and therefore we will work to strengthen and standardise our approach to match day management of acute mental health episodes." That was all from the AFL this afternoon. Now, Carlton released a statement, and it reads, "First and foremost, the Carlton Football Club support remains with Elijah Hollands, whose health and well-being continues to be the highest priority. The club continues to work closely with qualified medical professionals to ensure Elijah is receiving the necessary care, with support being extended to the Hollands family. The club would also like to thank all those who have sent through messages and have respected the privacy of the Hollands family during this time. On 23rd of April, the club provided the AFL a detailed factual account of the circumstances relating to Elijah Hollands and the club's round 6 match. This submission made clear the club's position that it supports its people who are highly respected professionals with the utmost integrity and operate with genuine care for all players and staff who represent the club. The league has today determined that a decision to remove Hollands from the field should have come sooner than the 20-minute mark of the final quarter. The club will make the $75,000 donation to Headspace the National Youth Mental Health Foundation, which provides early intervention mental health services to young people. The club understands the public's interest for further context to be provided on this matter. However, we will be unable to disclose sensitive and private information. Further to this, it would not be appropriate to provide additional public comment while a work-safe inquiry remains ongoing. Our support for Elijah comes from a place of genuine care and understanding of him and the challenges he has been experiencing, Carlton CEO Graham Wright said. We accept the outcome in the interest of enabling all parties to move forward while continuing to ensure the health and well-being of our people remains a priority. While our processes with the AFL is now concluded, throughout this time we have not lost sight of ensuring Elijah and his family continue to receive all the support and care they need. The messages of support our club has received on their behalf have been significant, and we thank everyone who has taken the time to do so. Elijah is taking the necessary time to prioritise his health and well-being right now, and he will continue to do so with our full support. That's the end of the Carlton statement. Now, my thoughts on this issue and the subsequent handing down of the penalty this afternoon. Considering Port Adelaide received a $100,000 fine for its handling of Alia's concussion back in 2023, I think Carlton can consider itself quite fortunate the fine was only $75,000. As Carlton mentioned, there are a lot of sensitivities and privacy that must be respected during this period. I completely understand that. But overall, as fans, I don't think we have had our questions answered. Many may argue it is not relevant for these questions to be answered. But I say it is relevant, as it goes to the heart and the transparency of the AFL and the Carlton Football Club to be open and honest with your fans. Don't treat us like idiots. Many of us fork out good money to support this club, and we deserve the truth. The AFL said that it's not the fault of one individual. To me, that's bullshit. That is arse covering, and that is fear of legal action towards the AFL from individuals at the Carlton Football Club. There are questions such as, who ticked off on Elijah Hollands playing? Who thought it was okay that Elijah Hollands remained out on the field until the 20-minute mark of the final quarter? Can we categorically rule out any substances used? These questions remain unanswered. We may never get them answered, but that doesn't mean we should stop asking the questions in pursuit of the truth. Now, I will leave the Elijah Hollands situation there for this evening. If you want to have your say on the issue, leave a comment at TikTok and on Instagram. Just search the Heatley Stand End, and you can be part of the conversation at any time. Moving on to the St Kilda loss on Saturday night. Another lead squandered in the second half. Carlton in front at halftime, falling apart and giving the opposition free run and attack. We've seen it all before, time and time again this season, and it's becoming repetitive. An 8-goal third quarter to the Saints and 9 unanswered goals either side of the main break set up St Kilda's fourth win of the season. Much to the delight of former Blues pair Tom De Koning and Jack Silvani. And it is the third time this season that Carlton has actually conceded 50 or more points in a quarter. So there's becoming a really stark trend that Michael Voss doesn't have any answers when teams get a run on. In the first half, there was a sense of composure going forward that opened things up for the Blues. We were lowering our eyes, hitting teammates up, and we were creating space. Harry Mackay became a decoy. It created opportunities for others in the forward line to create options and be attacking and dangerous. When the Saints did establish some possession in space, end-to-end footy was on the menu. Such movement meant the forward line for the Saints could create isolated one-on-one contests, and they had our measure. Rowan Marshall moved forward, created some absolute mismatches with our defence, and booted 3 goals. Cooper Sharman, he was reliable, kicking 2 goals for the Saints, and our defence was all at sea. Now, Matt Carroll, he provided one of the genuine highlights in the first half, taking a beautiful big mark as the ball was headed back into the goal square. Carroll floated over the top of the pack, sort of a mini Bizasto, if you like, and he slotted the goal to go with it. I thought Brodie Kemp battled manfully and continued with his great return from injury. Ben Ainsworth showed that he's earning his keep this year. And Ollie Florent and Jagger Smith, they were both serviceable. As for the captain, alarm bells are ringing. Another poor outing for Patrick Cripps. And I note on Footy Classified on Monday night, Damien Barrett alluded to a potential return to Western Australia for Cripps. 3 weeks ago on this very podcast, I relayed some news that I received from a Brownlow medalist who suggested to me that talks may have begun between Patrick Cripps' management and the West Coast Eagles. So, in my opinion, that is a watch this space, and it wouldn't surprise me if Patrick Cripps made a decision to go back to Western Australia at the end of this year. The other big issue surrounding the Blues is George Hewett and his absence from the senior side. Hewett hasn't played in the side since Good Friday, the loss to North Melbourne. That night, directly after the loss, I said on this podcast that Hewett would struggle to get a game in the current midfield mix. Either Hewett had to reinvent himself as a run-with player, or he would miss out on games. I still stand by the fact that Hewett may have to reinvent himself as a run-with player to get game time, but when you've got a player like Adam Chera, who hasn't been setting the world on fire, and Patrick Cripps, who has been largely ineffective, surely at some stage, George Hewett will come into selection calculations at the expense of either Chera or Cripps. I am led to believe that Hewett being missing in action isn't purely a midfield mix issue. And it's definitely not a form-based issue given how Hewett has been playing in the VFL. I've been told that there was a team meeting where Michael Voss gave the playing group a stern talking to. I believe Hewett then challenged Voss on behalf of the playing group. And since that time, George Hewett has not been selected. So make of that what you will. Just before I wrap up this evening, I want to touch on the dismissal of Paul Guerra at Melbourne. He's a good man, an extremely good operator. He was announced Melbourne CEO in April last year and only took over the role officially in September after finishing at the Victorian Chamber of Commerce. Last week, Melbourne President Stephen Smith announced Guerra's swift departure from the club with 6 months remaining on his contract. There's been much conjecture as to the reasons for Guerra's departure. None of these reasons have been answered. Stan executive Dan Taylor will start as CEO in 3 months. In the interim, Brian Cook and possibly Ned Guy will look after the team at Melbourne. Now, what I don't understand is that if Guerra had 6 months to run on his contract, and you've got Dan Taylor, who is a current board member, the likelihood of Dan Taylor taking up another job elsewhere is quite low. Why wouldn't you have just waited until Guerra's contract had lapsed? The Melbourne Football Club are yet to answer that question. The great oracle of football, Gerard Whateley, on his crunch time program on SEN on Saturday afternoon, suggested that Guerra had received a formal warning. I can tell you tonight that that is not correct. Paul Guerra never received a formal warning, nor has he received any answers as to why he was dismissed as CEO. I can also tell you that under Guerra's leadership, all the key metrics in commercial and membership were ticking upwards. Also, there are former senior members of the AFL who are absolutely furious at the decision to move Paul Guerra on. So much so that these particular members believe the Melbourne Football Club are potentially repeating mistakes that were made when Peter Jackson had to be parachuted into the club back in 2013. I know all that for a fact. Now, this is where I'm going to speculate. I don't know the facts on this, but I believe Paul Guerra was a realist when it came to Melbourne's chances of relocating to the Caulfield Racecourse. In my opinion, I think he saw this as a difficult obstacle to get over and was of the belief that Waverley Park was a much more realistic option for the club to relocate. But the Melbourne Football Club board were not supportive of this. So when you think about a CEO actually trying to find a realistic home base for his club, from an outsider's point of view, I don't think that Waverley Park is such a bad option for the Melbourne Football Club. This is a club who have been nomads for the best part of 50 years. Once upon a time, their home base was at the MCG. Then their administration was at the MCG, but their training base moved out to the Junction Oval. And at the time that they were based at the Junction Oval, the ground was in disrepair and was not up to AFL standard. Since then, Melbourne have moved out of the Junction Oval, and the Junction Oval has been transformed into a wonderful boutique hub for state cricket with flash facilities and great amenities. In that time, Melbourne sought to find a training base at Gosh's Paddock and a training base at Casey Fields. Now, Casey Fields is probably not in the greatest of locations. It's a bit far for players to have to drive to training, so this causes complexities. This also causes complexities given Melbourne's administration is at Olympic Park. So when you don't have the two functions of the club, off-field and on-field, housed in the same venue, it makes it incredibly challenging. So when it comes to choosing between getting Caulfield up and running and a existing facility in Waverley Park that has been vacated only in the last 18 months by Hawthorn, of course it's going to be a much more feasible option. Probably not the most popular option, but a feasible one. And as a CEO, quite clearly you need the support of the board to make decisions, but as an executive, the best decision is not always the most popular decision. And this is what I believe has happened with Paul Guerra. He has gone to make the best decision for the club, but it's definitely not the most popular. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I understand that Paul Guerra is steadfast on his legal position and he will not be deviating off that. And he has every reason not to. So we'll watch this space as it occurs. But anyhow, we'll be back later in the week to offer a bit of selection dissection ahead of the Friday night game for Carlton against Brisbane. It's going to be a really, really tough challenge, so not looking forward to it, actually. I hope we can keep it respectable, but definitely not confident. But until next time, it is Go Baggers.